Well, Claire, we just finished watching Wolf Hall, the limited series here in America, and I know it had already been seen there in England. Tell us, you play Anne Boleyn, one of the most famous royal characters in British history. How did you come to get that role?
Um, oh God, I don't know. I had worked with the director Peter Kosminski before, and I'd read the books and I loved the books, and I went to a sort of dinner with Peter, and I was told that he was directing it, and I said, "Oh my God, that's so exciting! I can't wait to see it. It's going to be amazing." And then I was abroad filming, and I got a call from my agent saying he wants you to go on tape for it, because obviously I couldn't fly back to England. I was in Puerto Rico. It was just never going to happen. So I went on tape for it. And at the time, I had fake tan, really long hair extensions. And so I was just thinking, the chances are that this is not going to go my way. And then he sort of sent some notes back, and I tried to do them. And then I met him over Christmas. And the whole time I was just sort of thinking that it wasn't going to happen, and I wasn't quite right for it. And it was such a different character to when I'd worked with Peter before, that I was just convinced that he'd be like, "No, I'm not sure she can do it." And then I got the part, and then the fear set in, and I just was then terrified. But yeah, it was quite long. It was probably about 4 or 5 months of sort of hanging around, waiting, wondering, hoping, sort of. Yeah, and then I found out eventually.
And this
Thank God.
character of Anne, of course, a real life character, but from the beginning of the actual limited series all the way to the end, I think she has the most growth of any character. I mean, not in terms of, I mean, she obviously becomes queen and so forth, but she is not the same person at the end as she was at the beginning.
No, yeah. I mean, I think weirdly, actually, I'd sort of disagree, because I sort of think of all the people depicted in that drama, she knows herself the best, I think. I think she knows what her weaknesses are. Cromwell says in the book, he says that she looks back at her past behavior and tries to learn from it, which he finds really admirable. That she's very political in that way, that she's able to look at how she's behaved before and learn from it and think, I shouldn't do that again, and try to move forward. And I think she knows what her weaknesses are. I think she knows her faults. I think her main problem is that she can't stop herself. She physically can't. She's like sort of got verbal diarrhea. She can't stop herself from saying what she is saying or doing what she's doing. She's so control of her actions, but at the same time, like a toddler, and just throws her toys out the pram and acts incredibly irrationally. And for an intelligent woman, just behaves incredibly sort of hormonally and emotionally. But I think in the sense that she travels the furthest, I think. I mean, Cromwell has a huge journey as well, but I think she travels the furthest. And yeah, I think you're probably right, finds herself at the end in a position where she thinks, oh, I've really learned about myself. You know, she is a sort of different person in the sense that she, I don't know. Oh, sorry, that's my clock. No, there isn't like a wild bird in my house. It's just my clock. It sounds like a bird every time it goes. It's very embarrassing. You can buy them on Amazon. Yeah, so I think she, even in the end, you know, when she's waiting to be executed, she's very true to herself. She doesn't pander to anyone or anything like that. I think she's a really solid, kind of strong person from beginning to end. But I think maybe Cromwell sees a different side of her. I think probably he sees her as vulnerable and all those sorts of things. He just hasn't seen that before, really.
Yeah, I love that scene at the end where he is saying to you, you know, move your hand, and does it in such a compelling way.
I know, it's awful, isn't it? In the book as well, when you're reading it, you're just going, you know it's coming, you know it's coming. Anything thing to add in, because it's a really human moment that she is concerned about her hair being in the right place before, you know, she can feel something annoying her, and she, you know, she's not sat there going, you know, going into some sort of massively spiritual place. Instead, she's thinking about the practicality of oh God, my hair's come out. And no, it's lovely that he says he wants the best for her. He wants to have a horrible death, I don't think.
And even with what you just said about her becoming more outspoken and saying what's on her mind, if she, I mean, even with all of that, if she could simply provided him with a son, I think he loved her, and I think Cromwell certainly liked her, and lots of people in that world liked her. So if that one thing had happened, I think she would have been okay.
Oh God, yeah. History would be very, very different if she'd had a son. I mean, she did have a son, but unfortunately, she lost quite a few children. But it different for her, I suppose. If she'd had a son, she would have been safe. And if you look at Jane Seymour, he just worshipped her and thought she was the best thing ever because she was like this angel who'd given him a son, regardless of the fact that that son then unfortunately died. He believed that he had an heir and he was happy. That's all he'd wanted. He was such a maniac for having, of course he was, but he wanted to continue the line of the throne for it to be safe. But then in the end, we got Elizabeth, and she was possibly one of the best monarchs this country's ever had. And she, was a monarch for England and only England. She never married, she never had any children. And I think it's funny that actually she probably got a lot of that from her mother without knowing it, obviously, because she wasn't brought up by her. But, she was very much Henry's child. But I think Anne Boleyn probably had a lot of genes in there of strength and kind of tenacity and all those sorts of things.
Well, speaking of her family, that was another, I thought, interesting aspect of this whole story was her particular family, that she kept a lot of them around her. They were very tight-knit, almost to the point of King Henry didn't, I imagine, even in his own home, feel comfortable around all of them.
Yeah, well, she did. She knew what she was doing. She moved, and Cromwell did it. Cromwell put all her family in place. He engineered it so that, she made him, but that he had her closest advisors were her family. He was an enemy of the Boleyn family, really, and that was possible. That's the main reason why he was in such danger, because he then looked around himself and realised that actually all the people that were in power were people that were more loyal to me than to him. But unfortunately, it still didn't go my way. But yeah, no, Henry must have just thought, it's sort of like having the in-laws around and having them stay forever, and all the big decisions you're making. But it was the way that he complimented people. It was the way that he made people feel good about themselves by moving them in. And it happened to the Seymours and pretty much every family afterwards, really.
Well, when I had Damian on last week, we talked about this next issue, and I'm sure you feel probably the same way. But as we talk about Emmy Awards and stuff, I love to mention these kind of folks. But as you get ready on a given day to play your part, I'm sure the incredible work by your costume designers and your hair and makeup people, and even things like art direction, that really helps you get into the role, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. And with Wolf Hall, the locations that we were in were extraordinary, and a lot of them were locations that had been visited by Henry VIII, and where possible, everything was pretty much Tudor. Everything was appropriate for that period of time. So the art department did some incredible things dressing it, but so much of the look of it came from just the buildings that we were in. And the costumes are just extraordinary. They were pretty much majority of them made, and were just amazing to wear, and painful, but amazing. And it just means that you don't really have to use your imagination that much. And when you're working with Peter as well, you don't have to use your imagination at all, because he tries to be the most unobtrusive he possibly can be with the camera. So a lot of the time you don't really know where the camera is, or where the crew are. Everyone's so sort of thoughtful and kind about not wanting to disturb what's happening between the actors, and that means that really we're just in a room talking to each other, and Peter just captures it, and then it ends up on screen, really.
Well, we talked about that style too, with his background and the way he shot this, just being almost like a documentary feel.
Yeah. Well, no, he obviously came up through documentary and things like that. And one of the things I learned with Peter from working with him before was that he doesn't like to precede the character into the room, and that's a real documentary sort of style. And I think it really, it works perfectly with Wolf because everything you see is from Cromwell's perspective, and all the characters are viewed from his perspective. And it's a very simple thing, but it's very important in the sense that every camera setup is with that in mind, and every camera setup Peter's thinking, you know, where is Cromwell in the room? What is he seeing? What's he noticing about people? And that does make it very much like a documentary, which means that for us, we don't really have to. There's no sort of, can you just stand on that spot and not move your eyes and just stare at the wall? You genuinely are there, living and sort of breathing it in a way.
And tell me about, I specifically want to ask about these two men, but Damian first, just acting opposite him.
Oh, he's amazing. I couldn't imagine anyone else playing that part. I just think he's absolutely perfect for it. And it's not just the colour of his hair. I just think he's just got such presence and sort of vitality and kind of like an everyman quality. Like he could literally talk to anybody and get on with anyone. And I feel like that's what Henry was like. I think he was really able to charm anybody and kind of wanted to be a man of the people. Do you know what I mean? And I think Damian is, and he just is wonderful to have on set, and he was just great and really sort of, you know, scary and formidable, but also sort of, you know, charming and kind, and just a deadly combination, I think.
And Mark Rylance, he has done, you know, he's probably one of the best theater performers ever, but we've rarely seen him, at least in America, on, you know, TV or movies. So just talk about, I guess that theater background really was fun for you to act opposite him.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the amazing thing is both Mark and Damian and myself, we'd all worked with Peter before. So we all knew we were sort of in safe hands, and we all sort of had different relationships with him, but we're able to have a sort of shorthand, which meant that, you know, it was just so easy. And I think with Mark, he never seemed nervous to me. He never seemed out of his depth or anything like that. I don't think he possibly could have felt that, because he was just so wonderful and just so brave at being sort of still and present and not doing anything really, not doing too much. And I think it would be so easy with that part to put something on it to portray him in a certain way. And he just didn't try and portray him. He just listened and was there, and that made it so frustrating being in scenes with him, really, especially as Anne, because she was always trying to figure people out and get something out of people. I think that's, especially with Mark's Cromwell, you sort of are watching him going, what's he going to do? Like, you can't trust him as far as you can throw him. You're looking at him going, oh, I'm not sure about him. Well, that's what she thought anyway, because she didn't know what he was doing. He's sort of silent and mysterious, and you don't know what he's going to do.
He's the ultimate chess player in that particular role.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Just the slightest, you know, even movement of his mouth or you know, an eyebrow might tell you what he's thinking.
Yeah, exactly. But sort of like a mafia boss in that sort of classic sense, that you're like silent, but could go off at any moment, and you don't know when he's going to do it. So you're sort of a bit tentative about, you're scared of him, and you should be scared of him, but you don't really know why.
But you like him. You're scared of him, but you like him.
Yeah, you're scared of him. You like him. It's all in there.
Because I think because that character, that real life character, is like that. That's why he can read the room so well and be such a good advisor, because he can look at other people and pretty much tell what they're thinking. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I think he viewed the world very much as from his perspective, in the sense that, in this character anyway, the character of Cromwell, because he was very political, he was a tradesman, he was a soldier, he'd done pretty much every job in the world, and he saw how the world worked. He saw that it was about money and power, and that, you know, people had things to trade. It was all about trade. He saw that if you bought this from this person, you got something back. In the book, it's all about the money that people owe him and how that is power, and the money that people owe Henry is power. You know, he realizes the flow of money and trade and things is how the world works. And yeah, I think that's a sort of slightly just sort of disturbing way of looking at things. But I think that would probably be very true to how the real Cromwell was. I think he lived 100 different lives for someone of that period, had travelled around the world. I think there definitely would have been an element of, mover and shaker about him.
And now that people have seen it, of course, it took a while to make, and then it takes a while to come out. And you're all, I know when you do something like that, you just can't wait for people to see it. What has been the reaction? What did people, like friends, family, people on the street, what are they saying about this particular project?
Well, all my family loved it, and my friends who've watched it loved it as well. I think it's one of those things that if you go into it knowing that you're not going to watch something, it's not a classic period drama. You're not going to go and see kind of what you expect, like lots of people on long journeys in carriages, and lots of beautifully backlit scenes. It's not. I mean, it's real. It is. That's why it's slightly disconcerting, because you're watching something that's period, but you forget that it's period, because it's so alive and there in the moment, and it's beautifully lit and beautifully shot, but in a way it sort of makes it look like an accident. It looks like, because it looks like a documentary, it sort of looks like an accident that it's like that in a way, which I suppose is I think the mark of sort of something that's really brilliant, that it's not trying hard, it's just sort of is. But I had a baby about 2 weeks after the last showing of Wolf Hall in England, so I wasn't really getting out much, so I'm not really sure about what. And I, obviously I was massively heavily pregnant, and obviously after having the baby, haggard and just looked like I'd been dragged through a bush backwards. So I don't really I haven't really experienced anyone sort of saying, oh my god, it was incredible, but the people who have obviously really enjoyed it, and people seem to really sort of be glad and thankful that it was made in a weird way. I think it was just a really brilliant piece of telly, and it was made in the right way. Its heart was in the right place, and everybody involved wanted to make a really, really good piece of TV, and I think that's what happened, really.
Well, the critics over here have certainly loved it. They nominated Mark and Jonathan and the project for Critics' Choice Awards, which were held earlier this week. How did you hear about getting that nomination?
I got an email from my agent saying you've been nominated, and I think I sent one back saying woo, but there was never any dream of going over or anything like that, because I've got obviously a new baby to look after and things like that. It's very funny that everything is very clearly put in perspective when you've had no sleep and you've got a baby to look after. As lovely as it is, you end up sort of going, oh great, that's brilliant, right, so if she's getting up at this time, what time can I feed her, and all those sorts of things. So it's sort of
way too many other things on your mind for that, but it's certainly an honor. You've got to appreciate that.
Oh god, yeah, of course it is. It's amazing, and it is also just so lovely that something that you worked so hard on, and so many people work so hard on, people watched it and said, well done, good job, like, well done. That's nice, because it makes it feel worth it in a way.
Well, I personally have you in my predictions for the Emmy Awards later this summer. I think you're going to get nominated there. I think a lot of us do. And so maybe you can, if that happens, that's way over in September, maybe you could figure out a way to get over here.
Oh god, she'll be really old by then. I'll be leaving her home. Yeah, I'll be over there like a shot.
Get that baby on their first flight.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We enjoyed Wolf Hall. Appreciate your time today, and good luck on those nominations later this year.
Oh, cheers. Thank you very much. Take care.